Good afternoon to everybody. And today I chose to be on time. I chose to show you that I take this seriously. So I'm on time today, right on the dot. So as usual, we will wait for people to come through and join us. And then when we've got a bit of a bigger crowd, currently we've got 4 people, 3 people, we will then continue to talk about what it is that we want to talk about. We are all concerned about the elections that are supposed to happen in Zimbabwe next year. We are all hoping that we will have good elections, and we are all praying that those elections will go well and will bring change to Zimbabwe. It's very optimistic, and it's a good thing for us to look forward to change. But it's also very important for us to be realistic. Can we get change from this political system? Can we get change from the people that are participating in the politics? All these are questions we must answer. All these are questions we must ask ourselves to determine if we are looking forward to something that is real. Very critical, very important for us to ask ourselves those questions. Is the change that can be delivered by our politics feasible? Is the change that can be delivered by our politics real? While we wait for audience, I'm just going to get tissue, 2 seconds. Thank you. We've got 15 people. Right, I'm going to go in and start talking about some of the issues. So we need to question if it is practical for us to be looking forward to change with the current politics that we've got in our country, the current politicians that we've got in our country, but more importantly, the current political system that we've got. As far as I'm concerned, it's impractical for us to expect change from a political system that was toxic and is toxic in the very first place. Our parents, our politicians, they went to war to fight a colonial government. They removed the colonial government. And soon after removing the colonial government, they took the entire system that the colonialists used and decided to impose the same system and use the same system to bring change to us. That for me is counterintuitive. You cannot have the tools, the weapons used by your oppressor, used by your rapist, and then think that that is what is going to give you therapy or healing. And in Africa as a whole, this is what our liberation heroes did. They simply replaced the white faces with black faces. Same system, same corrosiveness, and they put the same system and said that it will liberate us. It will give us freedom. It will give us all the things that we required since the oppression. That doesn't work like that. And so I'm going to try and bring to you the issues that I talk about and bring them together. One of the biggest problems that we've got in our society, one of the biggest problems that we've got in our education system, is a system of linear thinking. We think along linear lines. But fortunately for me, as a strategist, I'm able to see things from a multilineal perspective. Our politics is very linked, very associated with the issues I talk about the home, about the marriage, about the morality, about culture, and about the systems of this world. All of them come together with politics, to give us the society, the prosperity, and the success that we are looking for. Now, you will notice that when we adopted the colonial system of politics, we also adopted its systems, its culture, its morality. And today we can't understand why we are having political problems, things that we're not happy about politically in our country, yet the foundations of humanity, the value systems, the cultural systems, the morality, and the standards, norms, all have been determined by the political system that we chose. We chose a Westminster political system. That Westminster political system determines the statutes and the structure that we utilize to make laws, to make policies, and to make the rules upon which we live. The parliamentary system, the constitution that we utilize, is all based on this political system and the legal framework that it comes with. That is also going to determine the issues and the factors that influence our society, its values, its morals, and the way that those values and morals are inculcated. So you will discover that our morality used to be based on a chieftain system, and it used to be based on African law systems. But the moment we adopted the Western culture of politics, automatically we threw away our culture, our chiefs, and the leaders of our cultural system are no longer an integral part of our policy making. They are no longer the most important components of the lawmaking. So our lawmaking was given over to politicians through the system of parliament. And through that system of parliament, we saw the bringing in of laws that don't go hand in hand with the people. So the laws of our colonizers, the laws of 4% of our population are what we brought in. The parliamentary system of how we make laws, how we make statutes is what we brought in, even though it served only 4% of the population during colonialism. So by adopting that system, we adopted Roman Dutch law. We adopted English law. We adopted a combination of English law and Roman Dutch law, and then we started creating laws for an African people utilizing a foreign concept. Not only that, the way we socialize ourselves, the way we teach each other morals and systems, we began to utilize an education system. An education system that teaches us how to think, that teaches us how to do things, that teaches us how to structure things in order for us to conform to be a part and parcel of this system that at that time was supposed to make us slaves, was supposed to make us colonized, and was supposed to make us productive for the system. Unlike our African cultural learning systems, where we learned from society, from the people around us, that which we needed to master in order to make a society that works for us. So we've got this political system that is foreign. We've got this political system that brought in a legal system. And we've got this political system that then taught us how to think, how to learn, and what to learn in order for us to be slaves. And we're expecting that system to work for us. Why did this system teach us how to be slaves? What was the purpose? Because its purpose was to serve the people who created this system and make them rich. So it is a system that teaches people how to think. It gives them laws. It teaches them how to work in the system through education. It gives them laws through a parliament so that it can serve the interests of a minority. Who were these minorities? Well, where the system came from, there was a royal class that continued to reign over the citizens. So even in the UK, people think that the parliament, the president, and that ministerial system is what runs the UK. But the truth of the matter is that royalty, that monarchy, still has a very big influence on the running of that particular nation. And this is where we took that political system from without understanding how it totally works. So today Zimbabweans are now using the very same system. And they are expecting this very same system to emancipate every Zimbabwean. But what they forget is that where this system came from, where this Westminster system came from, where this constitutional governance system came from, was the same place where monarchs were ruling over the few, utilizing the few with the laws that they created to produce for the few, and controlling the masses with the laws and policies that would be made in a parliament that has got people that are answerable to a monarchy. What is then used is a system of elections, a system of plebiscite to make the people feel like they are participatory in choosing the leaders. But in truth, they don't choose the leaders. Why do I say that? Because for you to even participate in this political system as a politician, for you to stand for elections, you need money. You need to be able to be elected into power. You need to be able to communicate with your constituency. You need to be able to communicate with the electorate. And all that's not going to be possible if you don't have a number of things. If you don't have the finances to take part. If you do not have the clout, or if you don't have the word which needs to be given to you by media. So automatically we've already started talking banking, we talk media, we start talking about media institutions, private and state-owned, and then we also then have to talk about the clout. This thing that gives people the respect to want to put you as a politician, and the system that grooms these politicians to put them in our faces. All those systems are elitist systems that can control the people that we can vote for, that can limit the choices that we've got, and can determine that somebody within the banking framework or somebody within the communication or media structure can determine who it is that comes in front of us. So by the time you start electing these horses, somebody has made these horses stand in front of you. There are many horses that failed to stand in front of you because they did not have the mechanisms to stand in front of you. That is the political system that you and I have chosen to liberate the masses. A system of elitism, a system where the bankers ensure that the people who have the money to be able to stand in front of you have been carefully selected. A system that makes sure that the media chooses who is going to be in front of you as your politicians. These are some of the reasons why I believe that this particular crop of politicians that we have today do not have the capacity to take Zimbabwe forward. They cannot take Zimbabwe forward utilizing a system that is elitist, a British system that was built on maintaining a monarchy to be able to deliver what Zimbabweans require. Now, a lot of you Zimbabweans are very quick to cry and say, we need change in Zimbabwe because we need accountability. We need accountability, we don't need corruption, and we need a government that is going to be able to give people what it is that they want. A government that is going to be governed by the rule of law. The question is that this system that you chose, this Westminster system, does it allow for that? Was it created for that? Was it created to make people accountable when the system that created it in order to maintain power? Now, some of you are not going to understand what I'm talking about if you're not history students. But let me take you back to make you understand what I'm saying. The current governance system, or the constitutional governance system, or the Westminster system of governance, was created after, in the 1700s, we started having revolutions happening in Europe. People were tired of these kings. People were tired of what was called feudalism, where all the land was owned by kings, monarchies, and nobility who owned all the land. A few people, less than 1,000 people, where they owned all the land on which everyone was a slave. So they began to uprise. In France, they uprose. There was a revolution. They cut off the queen's head and the king's head. And that put a threat in European leaders. European leaders sat these monarchs and said, we're all going to be finished because what happened in France is going to happen everywhere else. Now remember that the European monarchy is all related. So to maintain themselves after their cousins had been killed in France, they said, we need a new form of governance, guys, before these people decide to remove us. Now that's the one part of explanation. But there's another part of explanation that says, no. Even within this order of what people were uprising, there was actually an influencing force that wanted to remove the monarchical system as we know it to put a new order that was going to have monarchy, banking, and then everybody else. So this was just a method, a technique of bringing in something new. So those are two schools of thought, but all of them say to us that the monarchical system was being demolished by the public. It was being demolished by something or someone. Now, once they decided that we have to protect ourselves, then you had to come up with a new system. And this system coincides with the upcoming or the coming up of democracy. Democracy started in France itself. But some people would say it started in France itself as a means of protecting itself. Those who were now behind these peasants, because there's no revolution without capital. There's no revolution without money. So there was money that helped these people uprise against the system. There was money that had to bribe certain military officials to not pay attention, certain intelligence officials not to pay attention to these people that were planning this uprising. These are then the people that set in a new system where the monarchy maintained itself, but having maintained itself, it needed to pacify these people. And how could it pacify these people? It pacified these people by making them understand, giving them the impression that they are electing their own leaders. They're not going to be ruled by people who have got royal bloodlines, who will be ruled by people who have this ordaining from God to rule over them. People were happy when they had this sense of democracy. Not only did Europe do that, Europe also decided that we need capital to come from somewhere, money to come from somewhere, to give these people who rose up because of hunger last time a little more than what they have on their plates so that they don't want to uprise against us. So what was the solution? The solution were a number of things. Capitalism was coming in. People were now going to be taken off the land and they were going to work in industry. They were going to produce goods and services. Those goods and services were going to create a bit more wealth, and with a bit more wealth, people would have a bit more to spend. We give them goods, we give them services, we give them nice things. They won't think of uprising. But that's not good. How are we going to sustain this system? Come in colonization. Come in Africa. This is when Africa now, colonizing Africa, going to get new markets, going to get new raw materials to provide these factories in which these European workers were going to work came from. And that is how this political system that you are using was started. Now, how is it that we, the Nkosana Moyos of our society, the Dr. Manyikas of our society, the Fadzai Meres, and ZANU-PF itself, MDC, and Our Lady Joyce Mujuru, expect to use the same system that was created to pacify Europeans by exploiting Africans in order for Europeans to have a small cushion to stop them from uprising and overthrowing their monarchs. How are you expecting that system to work for you when it was not created to work for Africans? How are you expecting this system to work for you when this system is not what it seems on the outside, even to the Europeans themselves, but it is a deception to maintain power at the highest levels? How is it that you as Africans are expecting accountability from your leaders, from the person that has got power? You expect that person to give you accountability, but yet that person has got power. The system is about power. The system is about collecting power. It is about amassing power. How then do you expect a system that believes in amassing power to be the very same system that is going to be accountable to those that do not have power? 2 seconds. Who is it? Lipo, hold on. I'll have to call you back. How is it that we expect that very same system to be accountable? How? Because if the system is built on power, if the system was built to maintain power, why is it that if ZANU-PF or any other political party in Africa that is not conforming to the European system, once you are in power, you expect those people to release power to the people, yet the system itself is created on maintaining power? How can that system emancipate people and give them power when it is supposed to continue to maintain power at the top of the pyramid? This is what your politicians are hoping for. This is what they are participating in. This is what they're getting themselves into, and then expecting not to be corrupt when they get into the system. You all expect ZANU-PF to come up with policies that enable you to have free and fair elections. You expect ZANU-PF to write policies that will take away power from itself and give power to the people. But is that logical when the system was created to maintain power at the top? Is it even possible for anybody in this system to change this system that was created 300 years ago to maintain power with the few and allow that few to amass power? And you need to understand where power comes from. It comes from wealth, it comes from money, and then it comes from military power. You expect ZANU-PF to release its ability to make money, to release its ability to control weapons and the military, and give all that power to the public, to give all that power to the Zimbabwean people, when yet the system of democracy was not created to give people the power, but to actually make sure that the elite maintain power over the people through an illusion. So, as long as you Zimbabweans want to use this system to emancipate yourself, as long as you want to use a European Western-centric system created by elitists, created by what we call the 1 percentile people that maintain elitism through the control of the monarch, that then has the bankers with the financial system under it, and then the security system below in order to pacify the masses. And I told you that the Europeans, unlike your leaders, they don't have to pacify their people. They don't have to rob their people. They can utilize their security system to pillage Africans, to continue neocolonialism, to continue traits of colonialism through sanctions, through financial power, through debt, so that they can feed their people and keep their people happy while Africans are starving. That is the system. And that is the system that you, in your homes, socially, your parents have been raised to accept this system as the most admirable system. Your parents will teach you that Western democracy is the best system. So socially, we've been socialized to believe in a Western system of democracy. Our parents who think they understand that system have got no idea how that system works, but they've been socialized to believe that whatever the white man does is correct. The next level of socialization is that we've been taught this in class, that Western democracy is the form of democracy that we need. We've then been taught the very same thing by the media. Then we've also been taught the same thing in the corporate structure and the corporate system. All 4 bases of creating the psyche of a nation, of socializing a nation, of building and molding a nation's culture and values have been tampered with by this political system, which has made us into these westernized people. We've thrown away our traditional system of culture, of ruling that we all understood, and we've gone for this hybrid system of ruling that is so convoluted that people don't understand it, even the Europeans themselves. So socially, we've been destroyed. We come from there, we look at the next tier, which is the tier of the culture. What does this system of politics do to us culturally? Culturally, it says to us as black people, we must throw away our black traditions. We must throw away our black systems, our black languages, our black norms and values. And so we've done that. And what we did with that is we threw away what we understood. Our traditional system of governance was understandable to us. It made our leaders accessible. It made our leaders accountable because we understood the system of accountability, but we could also see who it is that was ruling over us. In this new system that you live in, you don't even know who's your leaders. You're under the impression that your politicians are your leaders. But what you don't understand is that your politicians are pushed to make decisions by bankers, by business, and by more powerful militaries and governments, which means that they want to take power from your own leaders so that they can rule you. Right now in Zimbabwe, one of the problems that we've got is that we've got Western powers that are seeking to tell Zimbabwe how to run its economy. I'm not saying that our leaders are not doing anything wrong. We've already agreed that our leaders are pillaging. Leaders are doing what the system has entailed them to do, which is to steal from the poor, to enrich themselves, and to keep themselves in power for as long as possible. But another layer is what I'm introducing to you, is that in Zimbabwe, your leaders are not able to govern properly because they're under pressure. They're under the influence of systems that are outside Zimbabwe. So the World Bank is utilized, the Bank of International Exchange is utilized, the IMF is utilized, and other institutions that you are not even aware about are at work to pressure your government to make policies that are not suitable for you, the Zimbabwean people, but policies that are suitable for other governments to satisfy their own people. Again, you don't understand that, but you are wanting to take part in this particular political system. And then from there, we've now got these people who are standing as the politicians that want to be a part and parcel of changing Zimbabwe. Among these politicians, we've got people like Nkosana Moyo, a physicist, educated in that very same system that I told you about. He is a person who has developed what we call the Mandela Institute of Mind Development. Mandela Institute of Development Studies. My problem with that kind of a name is Nelson Mandela is the same man that sold out his people for whiteness. He's the same man who ensured that 80% of the country's land still belongs in white hands, 80% of the economy still belongs to 6% of the population, and then we've got an aspiring leader, aspiring person who wants to be a part of our politicians, who uses a name that is inspired by Nelson Mandela, yet Nelson Mandela never stood for the emancipation of black people. How is that possible? He sits on the board of Impala Platts, he sits on the board of Old Mutual. Already there we've got two outstanding institutions of imperialism. Implats comes from the order of the Londros of this world. It comes from a history of exploitation of black labor, exploitation of black resources for the benefit of foreign investors. These are monies that leave African continent after exploiting African workers who get paid peanuts just so that they can feed their stomachs, have enough energy to come back to work and be slaves again for the rest of their lives. He sits on that board. He also sits on the board of Old Mutual. We all know that Old Mutual right now, it used to be South African, now it is listed on the British Stock Exchange, and it is a company that owns a lot of land and a lot of property in Africa. Again, profiteering by taking out proceeds and profits out of Africa and taking them over to Europe. That man aspires to become a president of Zimbabwe. That man is one of the politicians that are saying they want to bring in change into Zimbabwe. But his change is interlinked, his training, his socialization, his education is interlinked with the very same colonial system, exploitative system, and elitist system that we have told you forms the political system that we want to follow, that we are following. What are the chances that that man can bring change? What is the chances that that man can empower the man at the bottom, the rural woman, your auntie, your grandmother that are in the rural areas who don't have a voice, who can't speak for themselves, who don't have education? We must never forget that the European elitist system looks down upon those who are uneducated. It looks down upon those who don't have money, and it believes that those people are fodder for the top of the pyramid. How is it that a man with that kind of a background has the capacity or potential or ability to take Africa out of its problems? He also worked for Standard Chartered. Standard Chartered is a financial institution, banking elite. We told you that the banking elite formed the second tier after the monarchs in the control of the world and the control of poor peoples and poor nations. Question is, what values has he learned? What is it that you admire him for? What experience does he have that is in line with developing the capacity of Africa, emancipation of Africa? Never forget that the banks of this world, the economists of this world have taught us as Africans to specialize in what we're good at. And as Africans, we've been told that we are good at being good slaves. We're good at being cheap labor. We're good at taking resources out of the ground and sending them to Europe. We are not good at processing. We are not good at anything else. So economics says by specialization, by that policy, and by the accounting policy of looking for the best rate of return, Africans are not good at industrialization. So no banker in the right sense of mind should lend Africa money to industrialize. So if our economists, people like Mr. Moyo, and if investors like him, bankers like him, are to take over power, having been taught that we specialize in cheap labor, will Mr. Moyo be able to write the policies and give the country the ability and the strategy to industrialize? Will he be able to go against his economics teachings? Will he be able to go against the corporate teachings that he had that allows us as Africans to start seeing ourselves as people who deserve to control our resources and to be able to industrialize to get a triple rent effect? I don't think so. Why? Because he's been in this corporate system, churning along, been sitting on these boards that teach the concepts that economics teaches, that Africa must be consigned to the bottom of the pyramid for the exploitation by the rest. We've got people like Dr. Manyika. He's a pastor. He's educated, from what I understand, in international studies. The question is, does he also have the logic of what we're looking for? Because you as Zimbabweans admire people not according to what they produce, but because of their papers. In Zimbabwe, we're a paper culture. If America had been Zimbabwe, we would have never had the Rockefellers. We would have never had Henry Ford. We would never had Andrew Carnegie, because those people did not have degrees. And because they did not have degrees, we would not have allowed them to prosper, because we're a society that only looks at the papers that people have. So now my question is, Professor Moyo, being a physicist, he has not created anything from what I understand. He has not been an inventor of any sort. He has no invention that he has created to solve Africa's problems with all these science qualifications, but we admire him because of his papers. Dr. Manyika, we admire him as well because of his papers and because of his education. Again, we're not looking at what it is that he has done. We're not asking whether he has produced anything. We're not asking for the output of that education, or even output without education. We are just admiring because of the degrees. So my question is, will he be able to deliver something? And what will he be able to deliver outside the education system, this Western education system that has taught him to be this rat that knows how to run around in this cage, that knows how to jump through the hoops and run on that turning wheel, but the rat has not been trained on how to behave outside the cage. This is what education is. We're rats in a cage. We're running. We master this cage and we become experts at the cage. Then we are let out into the real world outside the cage, and we wonder why we're not prospering, yet we don't know how to run outside the cage. We were taught how to run in the cage, right? And our African system of development, like I told you before, was an African system of cognitive learning that used to happen in the environment in which you were supposed to prosper. You have to learn how to make a bow and arrow, and then utilize that bow and arrow to kill an animal. And then you poison the tip without making enough poison to kill the whole family. These were practices that we were taught and learned in order to apply. But this education that we receive as Africans has no application. And we wonder why it's not working for us. And then our politicians, the ones we want to be our politicians, have this same in the cage mastership that they are going to utilize. Then we've got a person like Fadzai Mere, very intelligent, very articulate. But the lady is educated in Roman Dutch law. She's been educated in Liverpool, she's been educated at the University of Zimbabwe to master the application of European law. The one law that continues to institute itself upon Aboriginal people, ignoring the previous laws of the Aboriginals. Our lawyers like Fadzai are experts at laws that have brought down African civilizations. They're experts at laws that have nullified African practices, African conventions, African laws, and African culture. And those are the people, some of these guys that I've mentioned, who are going to preside over trying to bring change into African lives. Now, if matinyarare has learned of international law that institutes and says that all the territories that were found in the name of the Queen, in the name of the Pope, under the law of discovery, were white people who discovered any land that was not Christian, any white people who discovered any land of Europe that was not civilized, had the right to civilize, and after civilizing, the right to take over the rights to those lands. Do you understand? Terranomous, they could take over those lands and they could institute European laws and take over all rights. Till today, America is recognized as a country of white people, but it was taken through the act of discovery and manifest destiny to become a country that killed off its original inhabitants, and it is not a crime against humanity. It is not a genocide. America is a recognized nation. Australia, same thing, got rid of the Aborigines and a minority of people began to run that country. They are a country that is recognized after killing off the majority of the people. Imagine we have got an issue in Zimbabwe talking about Gukura Hundi. It's a big issue that there was potentially 20,000 people that were killed by this sitting government, and we intend to get some form of a solution to that problem legally. However, the same countries that are calling for this Gukura Hundi problem to be dealt with are the same ones that killed millions of people so that the minorities could become the rulers of those nations. We have got people who studied law in those countries and understand international law from the perspective that America is a bona fide nation, Australia is a bona fide nation, irrespective of the genocides that took place. And those are the people that we want to put in our parliament. Those are the people that we want to say are our leaders who must make laws for us. What are the chances that those people can make just laws for Zimbabweans? What are the chances that those people have what it takes to make laws that are representative of justice, representative of fairness, and representative of equity? If they are learning degrees that allow them to look at international law from the lenses of people that instituted genocides on the world to establish their nations. The United Kingdom and its wealth, the schools, the Cambridges, the Oxfords were built off the wealth of slaves, were built off the wealth of Africans who were being killed in the blood of Africans. But till today, we as Africans send our children there, we send our children there, they get qualifications there, and we don't see anything wrong with that. And then we expect the child that comes from there, we expect the Fadzai to come from there, and then come into Zimbabwe and create laws that are fair for Zimbabweans. Create laws that are Afrocentric, that are going to be perfect and equitable for Africans. Before I go, it is very important for Africans to become decolonized. And that is why I'm always talking to us Africans to say, everything starts with our moral system. The moment we lost our morality for a Western form of morality, for a Western form of thinking, psyche, and imagination, we lost what Africanism is all about. You cannot be shocked that politicians are greedy, corrupt, and they steal everything they get their hands on, yet the policies and the rules and the morality that they are formed upon is your parents were telling you that Murungu anoziva. Your parents took you to the education in Murungu, which is built on greed, selfishness, and self-centeredness. You were competing in class to be number one. What you didn't understand is that by this system of number one, number two to number last was a system of a pyramid that made other people seem like their thoughts and thinking is inconsequential. Yet African culture always recognized everyone in society and believed that they could contribute by consensus to the way that people need to rule and the way who would need to conduct itself. You've thrown away the morality of how we do our sex, how we do our marriage, how we do our raising of children. And then you're wondering why you've got greedy politicians. But in the home, were you able to raise a child that knows that they need to share? Were you able to raise a child who was not a spoiled brat? And when we are now having homes where we've got single parents, are you able to give those children the attention they need when you spend most of your time at work earning money, like the culture of this system encourages? And then when you don't spend enough time raising those children, what kind of politicians do you think they'll become? When you raise spoiled brats who believe that they can have whatever they want because mommy or daddy favors the child and the child gets what they want, what kind of politicians do you think you're going to have? Sharing politicians? Politicians who are not corrupt, who think about the poor? A lot of you send your children to private schools. You send them to private schools so that they become snobs, so that they speak English, they can't speak their local languages. They look down upon villagers, they look down upon poor people, they look down upon their relatives. You yourself as a parent, a mother or a father, you look down upon your relatives in front of these very same kids. Then that child becomes a politician tomorrow. You expect them to understand the plight of the poor. You expect that very same child to be able to say, I don't steal from the poor, when you told them that the poor are inconsequential. You told them kuti teta havana basa nekuti teta havana mari havana kufunda. You taught them kuti mbuya havana basa vanonhuhwa vanobva kumusha. And then you expect that child to become a politician who cares about vana mbuya, who cares about vanhu kumaruzeva vasina kufunda. A lot of you are snobs. Makazwanda, your own relatives, you don't have time for them if they are not educated. You only have time for your educated relatives, the ones with wealth. Then you expect your child to be a politician who cares about the poor. How? When you hate the poor in your own home. This is the Western culture that you guys have taken up. These are the Western values. I'm now bringing it together for you to see how the broken home, the single mother home, the home where a single mother or a single father talks ill about the other partner, creates children who are incapable of caring for the society. It creates children who are incapable of participating collectively with others. You come from a home where Mukadzi shows off about how she's doing better than the husband. You come from a home where the husband is showing off about doing better than his wife. The two are competing. Then you expect those people to form political parties in which people can come together and work together, yet it is always a competition. We have got feminists among us who believe they are better than men, and then therefore you expect those feminists to come and be able to work with men in a political party, to work together, but yet from grade 0 all the way up until they started their political career, it was a competition between the female and the man. Zimbabwean women are trying to show they are men. The educated Zimbabwean women want to show their men that they are better than their men. Then we're supposed to come together and form political parties that can make a change and a difference. I don't see that happening. That is why you've got belittling of each other in our political system. And that's the system that these new guys who want to come in are participating in. The system that wants to think it can change the country without changing the moral fiber, without changing the grassroots, our family structure, the respect system, the communication channels in our system. Right now you see the disrespect that's in our politics. We don't even look at our leader as a leader because the family home, the home structure, so therefore in our politics, like white people, we begin to disrespect ourselves and we don't follow any form of leadership. This is not the political system that's going to work for us. As Africans, if we want to be emancipated, we have to change the way we think. And any of these politicians that come and say they want to change Zimbabwe, but they never speak of Pan-Africanism, African unity, bringing down of borders that were created in 1886 for us to start creating a new Africa, a united Africa that is united against a world that is united against Africa. We are not going anywhere. Any politician who talks about Zimbabwe in isolation, talks about Zimbabwe without consideration of South Africa, Botswana, Mozambique, and the countries of the region. Any person who still thinks that Zimbabwe's position, Zimbabwe's performance has got something to do with Zimbabwe in isolation of international politics, in isolation of politics in the region, and in isolation of African politics has no right and no place to be a politician in Zimbabwe. We could have done the land reform program successfully. We could have done it successfully if the whole region of Southern Africa had said that any white person that gets dismissed from Zimbabwe will not get refuge in any of their countries unless that white person has paid the tax of exploitation that he has exploited in Zimbabwe. Had we had that kind of a policy on the whole continent, I'm telling you, white people would come right. They would start to acknowledge the rules and laws of Africa, or they would have to attack us with nuclear weapons. But the good thing is when they attack you with nuclear weapons, they become very clear that their issue is not about equity or fairness as they pretend. They are about destruction for pillage. Now, this is what our politicians are not talking about. And this is ZANU-PF is not talking about it. The opposition are not talking about it. We've got opposition members that want to give back land to the white man. We have got politicians that are, like I told you, colonized, hypnotized, that they think that we as black people are not capable to develop ourselves, so we need the help of white people. We still got politicians who believe that foreign investment is the means by which a nation develops. They believe that foreigners putting their money into a country will develop that country better by exploiting the workers of those countries to utilize the resources of that country to produce profits for these foreigners. All those people never understood what colonialism was about, because colonialism was exactly that, foreign direct investment. Slavery was foreign direct investment. And it seems that a lot of our politicians have not learned that lesson. We're not saying we don't need foreign currency. We're not saying we don't need foreign investment, but you need local investment more than you have the investment of foreigners, because you cannot have economies controlled by foreign money and foreign influence. Until we understand these rules, until our politicians start articulating these issues and not looking for simple solutions to make things look like they're working, but they actually start creating frameworks that work, that might include 50 years of suffering while we put these systems in place, which might include 50 years of people working in foreign nations, gathering whatever money they can and bringing it back as the foreign investors to bank back home, to invest back home. And until we change this political system, let's not expect our politicians not to be corrupt, because the system itself is a corruption. Therefore, it only breeds children who are corrupt. As I go, we've got to change the way we think as Africans. As long as there are still some of you who listen to me talking and you think you're listening to a madman, it's an example that we're not yet where we're supposed to be. The systems that were created of our education, our socialization, our law, our culture that we are adopting right now wasn't meant for us. It was meant for the benefit of an exploitative, cruel, and evil people. If we want to change from evil into a new direction, we've got to change those systems. We need to change the political system. We need to change the education system. We need to change the legal system. We need to change the culture upon which we have acclimatized ourselves to. Failure to do that, we're going to go worse than what we are today. Because the only difference is you were oppressed by a white man before. Now you're going to be oppressed by your black people, black leaders, black business people, black intellectuals. And after they've exploited you, they are going to be exploited by your Westerners as well again. So this time your poverty is going to be worse off than that which you had before, because you're being exploited by two layers of exploitation. I hope you guys understand. I hope you start reading wider. I hope you start understanding what Pan-Africanism is. I hope you start reading where this foreign system of politics that we have came from. Start reading on the laws of discovery, the laws that founded the boundaries, the borders that we have today, that we keep instituting those very same laws by applying the systems and the international laws and globalization that we have today. Thank you. Let me read a few. Hammonds says, we want to learn Shona and Ndebele, English must fall. That's true, Hammonds, but you know, as long as we're still not speaking the same languages, we're going to have to use that English. Unfortunately, our leaders didn't start Swahili as an African language for us to all learn, which is part of the colonialism I'm talking about. So I can't speak to you in a universal African language. But understand that this group we're on speaks to people all over the world. And it doesn't only speak to us as black people, it also speaks even to them as white people. There are white people watching now. So we need to be able to communicate with each other to get the message across so that we can start strategizing on how to make change. If I spoke in Shona, the Ndebeles would say, why did you speak in Ndebele? And in Shona. If I spoke in Ndebele, the Shonas would say, why do you speak in... You understand? And in Zimbabwe, we've got 16 official languages for those of you that don't know. Most of you don't know that we've got 16 official languages in Zimbabwe. We've got more languages in Zimbabwe than South Africa. Sikumbuzo. Yes, we have an element of madness. That is true. Clayton, you're making sense. Thank you, bruh. Blessing, Jacob, July. Very good points. Thank you. I appreciate that. Howard. Yes, true. Dale Manuel. What's up, Dale? Are you hunting today? Biggie. Independent candidates. I don't know how solid independent candidates are in a system that is about group politics. So it's a bit difficult. And like I told you, you need to have a lot of money as an independent to be able to make it in the Zimbabwean political system or a political system anywhere else in the world. Guys, I love you. I speak to you because of love. I speak to you about fixing our nation, fixing our psyche, fixing our morality, fixing our mothers, because they're the most important component. If they come right, the nation is right. Thanks.